Well, hey, good Wednesday evening to you. How is everyone? It's good to see you. It's good to be seen by you. I, of course, am your host, the host with the most, Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver, and I hope you're all having an absolutely wonderful Wednesday. Of course, it is the 3rd of May, 2023. Guess what? We are just 15 days away, 15, that is a fortnight plus a day away from our very special guest, the one, the only Errol Otis. He will be here at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard, May the 18th. You don't want to miss it. Trust me. And if you're afraid you're gonna miss it, if you're like, I'm gonna be out of town, you know, my dog's gonna go see his chiropractor, whatever. Just reach out to us on social media, on Twitter, on the Discord, email. If you chat it to me in the ensuing chats, I may forget because of the lack of permanency of those. But if you at least comment to me underneath the video itself, I will absolutely, positively do my darndest to ask him your questions and discuss whatever it is. But anyway, and speaking of important people, of course, Kyle will be along this evening. I am sure of it. He's probably off getting his coffee ready or having a bite of breakfast or taking his morning rounds with the youngins or whatever it is that Kyle do, because remember, he's on the other side, which is to say he's in Australia, not the other side, like, you know, has passed on into the afterlife. Certainly not. So yeah, that's Errol in a couple of weeks. I need to get off the stick and reach out, of course, to Darlene and to Diesel LaForce and see if they're game for a little chit chat on the show. Because they're both really cool people, and it would be great to have them on. And of course, Jim Ward and so many other wonderful people to try and cram in to the schedule. Not that I will cram them, I will invite them. I will politely ask them to come in and take a seat. Between now and the guac. And if you're new here, and there's a chance you might be, because guys, we're at 4,560 subscriptions on the channel. As of earlier this evening, I should say 4,560. And I couldn't be happier about that. I am really over the moon, guys. That is fantastic. Dan wants to know when Traveler is starting back up. I don't know. Traveler is Kyle's game to decide to run or not. I don't really have a handle on running Traveler, and Wednesdays is Kyle's jam. And if Kyle's going to run some Traveler, starting it up again is entirely up to him. So we can ask him. We can ask him when he arrives if he's gonna run some classic Traveler for us again. That would be darn spiffy. But anyway, so yeah, lots of guests coming up. But anyway, back to the guac. If you're new here, and again, all the way back to what I was saying, 4,560 of you. So we've had some new subscriptions, and hopefully you new subscription folks are watching right now. What is the guac? The guac is the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention 2, because this is the second one we've had. And the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention is a virtual convention. That's right. It is a convention that you don't have to leave the house for. You just sit down, you grab your favorite device, your laptop, your tablet, your mobile phone, your PC. Imagine having your guac session up on your television, cast your device right up to the TV and play some Dungeons and Dragons and other classic role-playing games with friends, new friends, strangers who'll become friends. Do all that sort of fun stuff. It runs from the 22nd of June to the 25th of June. And you can find that if you go to warhorn.net, warhorn.net, and I will give you guys the actual full URL to that. Let me just share that with you over here. So right there in the chat with you folks in the chat is the link to the guac. It's free, guys. It's absolutely free. If we ever switch to the guac, the Great Overland Underground Online Gaming Convention, which I will do if and only if the channel reaches 10,000 subs, is my gift to you guys. We'll hold a real convention. I don't know how long it'll last. I don't know where it'll be. I have none of that planned because, quite frankly, I think it's going to be a good long time before this channel ever hits 10,000 subscriptions. I know I said that all throughout, we're at like 1,500 subs, and I was doing the math. I'm like, okay, at this rate, it's going to be 10 years. It's going to be 10 years before I get to 10,000. So I'm not worried about that at all. And then Wizards of the Coast started playing Russian roulette with their feet, and they've lost every time. And the more I report on it, the more people go, hey, this guy's got some interesting points of view. I'm going to subscribe to his channel. So literally overnight, the channel jumped up like 1,200 subscriptions, and it's just been marching since then. In fact, in five more channel subs, we will have gained exactly 3,000 subscriptions since Wizards kicked off this grand game that they've had going on January 17th. I was looking at that metric today. It's like the line just kind of slowly going up from 1,000 subs in March of 2022. And then January of this year, it's like almost vertical line. And then it keeps going. Like it goes from 1,565 subs up to like 3,000 and change, and then just keeps going up at an angle because Wizards can't help but keep screwing up. So I shouldn't, when I woke up that morning, I was like, oh crap. I may have to start planning for a real in-person convention, but it's tapered off. It's gotten steady again. And even though Wizards keep screwing up, I'm not getting the days of like 200 subscribers have subscribed because of this video. It's like 5 subscribers have subscribed because of this video. I mean, the whole, the ongoing debacle, and I want to touch on this real quick because I don't think it constituted an entire video, but the Pinkerton raid on my guy Old School MTG. I asked him if I could mention this on the stream, and he has mentioned it on his stream. He is in touch with attorneys. He has reached out to for legal advice on this. To what end, I don't know. I did ask him to come on the show. And he's absolutely doing the right thing right now by seeking legal advice. And they're probably advising him, don't say anything yet. Let's try and untangle this. So that's what's going on there. But that whole debacle, that was like 30 or 40. And now this thing where somebody, because they're playing, oh, we have no idea who did it, who deleted on Jeff Easley's signature from Jeff's promo poster he did for Honor Amongst Thieves, the most ironic title ever. That's netted a few, but it's not like the hockey stick that we got when Wizards first started being like just so blatantly on the face of it stupid. So I think the idea of we're going to hit 10,000 within a few months, that's not going to happen. It's probably steadied back off, and it'll probably go back to years. It got a nice boost, though, so it'll probably be before the decade is out. Hello, RPG Grandma. Hello. I agree with you, Lightmane. I think 1E is the better game. But anyhow, to continue, what this has to do with the great underground online gaming convention, we are close-ish. I would say at 45, 60, we're within 400. It is possible, not terribly probable, it is possible that we could end up hitting 5,000 subs by the end of the guac. We could hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention. And if that happens, we're going to have a raffle, and there's going to be 2 drawings. Drawing number 1 will be for a bespoke bound volume that contains the 3 core OD&D books and the 4 supplements in a single volume, if I can get them printed in a single volume. Otherwise, it'll be 2. And I've shown what they might look like. I've actually got copies myself. Yeah, John, you're right. There won't be Gamer Funk. You'll have to bring your own Gamer Funk. Wasn't that a 70s rock band, like a heavy rock band, Gamer Funk Railroad? Anyway, I don't know. The second drawing will be for a premium color set of the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual for first edition AD&D. So you will have a chance to win one of those 2 when we do the raffle, if we hit 5,000 subscribers by, at the very latest, the end of the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention. So if you want a shot at those, get ready, hop up on Warhorn, sign up for the con, tell all your friends to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see if we can get it to 5,000. And guys, it has to stay at 5,000 because it's like it hit 5,000. Oh, now it's dropped to 49, 98, 97, 95, 99. No, it's got to hit and stay at 5,000. So like just bip and then drip back down. That doesn't count. That's got to be a solid 5,000. Kevin, you're running Keep on the Borderlands. That is awesome. And I'm seeing the red light over the door to the green room. So that means Kyle is in the studio. So I'm going to go ahead and don my headphones and switch on our cameras to our remote location and welcome in our co-host. More than just a co-host, Kyle's a friend of mine. And he's a really solid dude. and he brings a lot of joy to this show, and I really appreciate his participation here. He makes this a better place to hang out. So everybody, put your hands together and welcome my friend and co-host, Kyle SCHUANT. Kyle, what's happening, brother?
Hello, boys and girls. Yeah, we've got a bit of feedback there.
You are 5 by 5, my friend. We got you in the pipe. You are clear, crystal.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm not very well set up this morning because I hopped on thinking, so what time has he got the stream on for today? And so I hopped into the Discord and I clicked on the link and went, oh, he's already going. So I went off and I got my guac cup.
There you go.
Guac 2022 cup and filled it with coffee and sat down. So I'm not all organized in the gym studio today. You get the more glamorous backdrop here.
That's
pull the blinds down because outside you've got the bright winter sky, and that would be a bit glary for you guys. So only the highest production values here in the
only the highest production values, exactly. I've got to, if nothing else, we've got to get you like a green screen. I'll send you some felt, and you can get like a like a stately library backdrop for yourself or something.
Yeah, the green felt to also go on the dinner table if we have gaming here ever again.
There you go. Exactly. So, first of all, we had a question for you, Kyle. When you're away, are you going to do Traveler again?
I'm not planning on doing it in the near future. No.
Okay.
I like to do one game and then another. The only one that I'll ever do back to back is D&D.
Right on. Well, I
feel D&D just kind of has more legs because it's got your level progression and all the rest. There's a fairly clear idea of what do you do when you're first level. You go out and you find some really easy monsters to kill, and then you try to level up and get some better gear and all the rest. And what do you do when you're third level? Well, now I've got some second level spells, so let's go and learn them. And by third level, hopefully there's a +1 sword in the mix somewhere there, and all the rest. So there's more kind of expectations of what you do at particular levels, and that. Whereas there's a lot of the other systems out there and don't necessarily have legs, and you can find yourself just spinning your wheels. And what do you do after you've pissed off everyone you've met? Let's just go to a new subsector and find new people to hate. It's just like computer games. Like after you've cleared the map of zombies or whatever. Okay, now what? So I feel like D&D. I'll run multiple. So for those who don't know, I tend to try to run campaigns of like 6 to 10 sessions because that's what most people's games end up at anyway, even if they don't intend otherwise. So if it's going to turn out that way anyway, let's do it on purpose. So short-ended campaigns with a particular goal, more or less. And after that, you can reassess whether you want to repeat or you want to try something different and so on. And my experience is that repeat, let's do it again, only really comes up with D&D. I mean, you're always going to get people who are enthused about a particular game system and everything, individuals within the group. But looking at the group as a whole and keeping everyone together, you can keep people together for like 6 to 10 sessions, but after that, you start getting people drifting in and out. So, and I'm not a past master at keeping together large groups for a long time or drifting with dealing with people drifting in and out like you are, Bill. So yeah, not in the near future. I would do something different first.
Okay. Well, I mean, and I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's also a never say never, right? Like you're not going to say
Yeah.
no.
No. It's not that I'll never run a Traveller campaign again, and I don't think like Kevin's like every 3 to 5 years. I don't have to wait that long, but I just mean consecutively, right? So in those terms of 6 to 10 weeks,
So
I would happily do I don't know, a conflict game, then a Traveller game, then a conflict game, then a Traveller game, and then a Cinnabar game or something. I don't know, but I happily do different ones each time. With like Traveller being every second one, but I wouldn't do Traveller. And I could happily do D&D, D&D.
yeah,
It's a bit like the Blues Brothers. What kind of music do you guys play here? We got both kinds, country and western.
Western. That's right.
What kind of gaming do you do here? Well, we do both kinds, Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons. That's right. Both kinds of tabletop gaming, folks. So there you go. I hope John, as John Walker and Don McCleary were both asking about that. So you see, it will come back around, not straight away. So from the co-host mouth right there. So that's a good thing. So I have a question for you, and I didn't know if I should put this to the audience or wait till you got here. And I'm glad I waited till you got here, because this may be some kind of strange question for you, Kyle. But I'm just going to throw this out here because I want this discussion. I asked this question on Twitter, and it is based on something that happened on my long-standing D&D campaign that's been going for a decade now. And the question that I have is, if you have a player, if you play a long campaign and you have a player who sticks with a character for years. Now, I think you and I, Kyle, are on the same page about character backstory, right? Yeah. Your character backstory is that you walked around ankle deep in pig shit till you said, screw this, and took 2 gold pieces in dad's hoe and joined the peasant levies, and then got strong enough to do something foolish like stick your head in a dungeon, right? I mean, that's your character's backstory. But of course, as you play, particularly if you have a character who survives to play in a game for years, plural, when the time comes, your schedule changes because of work, and it's not going to change back. You're having your first kid and you don't foresee like this is a life-changing event. Whatever life-changing event takes you away from the table, if you really dig that character enough that you're attached to it, and you say, hey, look, Bob the fighter wants to retire and become Robert the landlord and marry that barmaid that he was always romancing when we would go into the town of Billsville, and that's how I want my character to end. Is it incumbent on the DM, do you think, Kyle, to say, okay, well, that sounds nice. You can, let's just close the books on your character that way? Or do you as the DM go, no, that's my character, and next week when you're not here, he's going to trip and fall face first into a green dragon's mouth, chomp, 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 and that's the end of it?
No, and I mean, it's like the first one. If that's what you want your character to do, fine. I mean, it's people can settle down and get married if they want. That's not a big deal, especially if they've got millions of gold pieces. That makes it easier to settle down and get married. Just have a strong prenup. But it's why would you? I don't care if the player has had that character for years or had that character for 3 sessions. If they say my character now retires, their character now retires. And if they say they retire with the goal of settling down with a nice other little hobbit or whatever, that's fine. I mean, the guy who played Cag the fighter, who rolled up 1 hit point for his fighter and decided that he said Cag thinks he's invincible, and I said, how does that work? He's got 1 hit point, and he said, well, if he'd ever been hit, he'd be dead. So obviously he's never been hit. Therefore, Cag thinks he's invincible. And so Cag went ahead, scouted ahead for the party, just went ahead, didn't bother looking for traps and all the rest, just blundered on ahead. Now, I think that was the player Cole's way of just rationalizing, I'm going to get my character killed as quickly as possible so I can roll up a better one. But he survived. He made it to the end of the dungeon. Like, he even climbed on the back of a basilisk. That's right. I was thinking it was a lizard. It was a basilisk. He made his saving throw to avoid its gaze, and he climbed on the back of it and was stabbing away and killed the basilisk. And they got plenty of treasure, and he had 1,500 gold or something like that. And I said, okay, so, and the guys were taking the treasure out of the dungeon, and he said, Cag retires. And I said, don't you want to, go and level up? You might roll more hit points this time. He goes, no, I'll probably just roll 1 again. He said, that's it. Cag's retired. He sort of has a sense that maybe he's not invincible. And so he retires. That was all in one session. It was a one-off.
All in one session.
Yeah, it all happened in one session. And so it was, okay, great. He wants to retire. He wanted to retire. So in later games, players or the player character sometimes encountered Cag the fighter who was running a tavern. And, he'd retired after one adventure. Like the soldier who does one deployment, one foreign tour, and then goes home, and then he doesn't do 10 tours of Afghanistan or whatever. He does one tour and then goes home. Or like the Terminal Lance comic author. He was 4 years in the Marine Corps. They were begging him to sign up for more. He's like, nah. He said literally his first day in boot camp, he was counting down the end of the days to the end of his contract. He left. He did the GI Bill and all the rest. And he left. There was and he did one tour in Iraq. He's like, "Yep, I've done my time. That's it. I'm over." I don't know if he has 1 hit point, Maximilian, but he felt he'd had enough, and so I got no problem with that. Now, another instance, a longer term player I had, one of the campaigns I had 30 years ago. I had this player, Peter, and he had Durf, the magic user. He's like, yeah, Fred backwards. Okay, Durf. And Durf had the experience of having not 1, but 2 picking up of the girdle of gender change. So it just became Durfar, the magic user. It didn't care. Durfar. And then later on found another one and put that on. It became Durf again. Anyway, he knew he was finishing up the campaign. So he finished it up by basically stealing the treasure of the rest of the group. It's like, I'm 8th level. I want to become 9th level and, establish my own stronghold and stuff. So he stole the treasure of the rest of the group. And then went off and established it. And so the players said, well, we're going to get him. And so, so Peter retired from the game group. So Durf had slowly become neutral evil over the years. He'd done alignment shifts and lost levels and everything. Slowly become neutral evil. And so sitting there neutral evil in his tower with all his minions. And so that became a dungeon for the players to fight through. And they wanted to get revenge on Durf. And get their treasure back.
Of course they did.
Magical weapons. So they fought through the dungeons, and they leveled up. They were 8th level or something like that. And they went to fight Durf, and it was a TPK.
Don't screw with Durf.
I was contacting Peter and going, okay, how do you want me to run this? And he goes, well, the way I would set up my defenses is. So I set it all up and I followed that, and it was a TPK. But by this stage, these characters themselves, the players along the game had said, look, we get married, we have children or whatever. So their characters took a year or two off adventuring, and then they went off and they left their spouses to take care of the children. But yeah, their spouses had lots of help because they had hundreds of thousands of gold or whatever. You can hire some pretty good nannies and tutors and stuff for that.
Yeah.
They didn't have strongholds, but you know, they have a cottage somewhere. And so their children then, they're right, we first level. So it was the juniors. They went off and they leveled up, and then by the time they were about 5th level, they felt ready to take on Durf again. And he wiped them out. So over the course of about a year, they had many other adventures, but over the course of about a year, this one ex-PC wiped out 2 generations of the rest of his old party.
That is ruthless and inventive, and I love that. Hello, TXG. Welcome to the chat.
After that, I joined the army, so the campaign ended. So I didn't have the chance to woe unto the 3rd generation.
And I had asked this question on Twitter this evening, because this does pertain to the big Monday night game. A few months ago, I had a player, good guy, solid guy, James. If you're out there watching or listening in the future, I hope everything is awesome for you and your wife. But he had some major life changes that would necessitate him giving up the Monday night campaign. And he had a pretty powerful cleric. He had a 9th level cleric. I mean, he had built this guy up from 1st level over the course of, almost 6 years. And, so I talked to him, and I had a lot of fun ideas. The party was chasing down Drelsna, the vampiress from Lost Caverns of SCHUANT, and she was kind of chasing them back and forth. And she had that sort of love-hate thing going on with him, because he's a lawful good cleric, she's a chaotic evil being, and he's already got his fate tied up with another powerful female being. And I was literally coming to a nexus point in the game where I was going to be like, okay, there's some important stuff happening. And I didn't tell him this, but just out of the blue, he was like, I got to leave forever. I was like, oh, well, okay, that's fine. This, and this are going to happen with your character. Is that okay? And there was this kind of awkward pause, and he was like, no, I would like my character to just retire with the powerful NPC. And I was like, and because he was a friend as well as a table member, I said, you know what, dude, you've been here almost every Monday night for 6 years running. And I mean, he had a major life crisis, health crisis in like the last few months, but he was still there every Monday. Didn't bring it up, never mentioned it. Just was like, yeah, so for the past few months, this has been going on. And everybody was like, why did you not just tell us and then take the Mondays off? But, sometimes you need that, right? You need to, it's like, no, I need to do this. He departed the game, and I was like, good, I'll NPC your character and have these things happen. And he was like, no, my character retires.
Yeah, so it's up to the player, and I've been on the other side of it as a player. So I was in I don't know how long it lasted, 6 or 12 months. Anyway, a relatively long-running recon campaign. It's a bit obscure nowadays, but recon was a Palladium game where you were like reconnaissance, special forces, long-range reconnaissance patrol, that sort of thing. And in Vietnam, it's a fictionalized version. They just got Nam and the state and stateside, but whatever. And we had an international group. It was like, I don't know what we were meant to be, foreign mercenaries or whatever, but it was some unit that, so we had like an Israeli character and an Australian character and Canadian and Polish character and everything running around doing these patrols, fighting commies. And anyway, I had Oscar, this Aussie SAS guy, and liked Slim Dusty, and was playing Slim Dusty records back at the base all the time and annoying everyone. But he was a relatively strong moral character. There was some alignment system you had, like there was opportunistic where, you know, you're pretty neutral. You try to do good, but you know, if you can get some ahead for yourself, you can. Am I dropping out here?
No, I'm listening to you.
Okay.
Go on.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, I just heard some feedback, so I wondered. Yeah. Anyway, the other characters were a bit more malign and careless. There were things like the commie soldiers run into this village, and we have this running gun battle through the village, and then the commie soldiers and all the villagers have run into the town hall to hide, and the commies run into the town hall. So one of the players just like fires an RPG into the town hall, so it takes out the bad guys, but a bunch of villagers as well. And my character was horrified by all this, and I remember discussing it with Tony and going, "This shit's awful, man." And you know, I wanted to just like cap the guy who did that, and he said, "Like, if you'd done that, I would have supported you." But I thought it would just cause too many ructions within the game group if, you know, the players start killing off each other's characters and that. So I didn't go there. So I said, what I do instead is I'll record everything they do. I'm going to document everything they do. You know, they're quite happy to take photographs with corpses of their victims and stuff. So I'm going to take photographs and everything. I'm going to be the team recorder of everything they do. Mm-hmm. And then about a year later, he rang me up and he said, you know, these guys have kept doing, because like our characters went on to become mercenaries in Africa in the 1970s and all the rest. He rang me up about a year later and he said, look, I'm looking to finish up the campaign. So I thought, you know, what's Oscar been doing? Because Oscar had retired to Canada with a knighthood. There was, because when we were mercenaries in Africa, they'd wanted to, there was this little bit of Angola called Cabinda, which after independence of Angola, it looked like Cabinda might become its own independent country. It's just this like little tiny thing. It's a sort of an enclave within another country, and it happens to have large uranium resources. So there was a brief independence movement, which was briefly supported by some Western countries and the Soviet Union until they discovered their own, a bit more of their own uranium reserves, and then they didn't care about Cabinda anymore. So, or there was a nuclear arms reduction treaty or something like that. So they went, oh yeah, we don't need that much uranium after all. 10,000 nuclear weapons is enough. So anyway, so in the game, Cabinda was invaded by a British-US force or whatever, and they just basically gave us knighthood. They said you can either have $1 million or a knighthood, and then just go away. So my character took the knighthood, so he became Sir Oscar, and then he went and retired in Canada to write his memoirs. And so yeah, he's all retired. And Tony rang me up, the DM, and said, you know, I'm looking to end the campaign, and I thought your character could help do that. And so we discussed it, how he would like, you know, prepare a dossier and send it off to all the newspapers and to the International Criminal Court in The Hague and all the rest. And yeah, he did that. So half the party ended up in prison, and the other half the party went in hiding with their millions and went and lived in Saudi Arabia or something.
Nice.
So I've been on both ends of that. What do you do with a retired character?
So I had asked this on Twitter, and because RPG Twitter is actually kind of an all right place. I have it very prominently featured in my Twitter bio. First edition AD&D only, no politics, and that is where I stay. I stay in my lane, as it were, and as such, my Twitter feed is about 83.5% idiocy free. Do not bring your evil.
So it's not real role playing then if it's that much idiocy free.
General public idiocy, Kyle. If we're talking about role playing idiocy, that's a different matter altogether. But I thought maybe we could take a look at what some of the folks and you guys in the chat. This is not just a conversation that Kyle and I alone are having. I would love to hear what you guys have. But before we take a look at the Twitterati, real quick, you got a couple of questions. Not specifically about this, but Damien asks, have I ever run a session where the party had to plan a raid on an enemy's base, wherein that due to planning and lucky initiative rolls absolutely trounced a serious enemy? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A well-laid plan. I don't care what the system is. A well-laid plan by players that goes off well, you let it go off well. They're just that good and just that lucky. I played very briefly before the whole thing kind of slagged down for reasons that are not worth going into now. I did a play-by-post in a Twilight 2000 game over a decade ago, more than over a decade ago. But guess what? I had a couple of veteran participants in the game. And there's a bit where your party can find out information that there are like 100 and some odd NATO personnel being held in a Warsaw Pact prison camp in central Poland. That's like one of the plot arcs. And the team, the unit, was large enough in terms of manpower that they assembled they gathered together, they scraped together enough firepower and enough armored vehicles and so on, and they did a great escape or a great raid. They got 100 some odd troops and liberated them from the Soviet forces and were able to do that. So yes, I have absolutely seen a plan come together, to quote Hannibal Smith. I have seen a plan come together. And the other question was from Trace for you and I both, Kyle. I'll let you field the first one. Have you ever had a problem player that interfered with or took away from the game in some way? And if so, how did you deal with it? Kyle.
Okay, so there's three essential kinds of problems that players can bring to the game table. One is just the problem as a player, as an individual, that this individual is stinky or obnoxious or never brings snacks or some other offensive behavior. This person, usually you don't have to deal with them because they sense that they're not welcome and they wander off. In theory, there are people who are just so oblivious that they won't realize and they'll be around for years. But I haven't really experienced that too often. And this is another advantage of doing those terms of campaigns of 6 to 10 sessions, that people who are feeling a little bit uncomfortable because nobody likes them, they use the new campaign. I don't want to play D&D. I just want to play Traveller. And so then they move on like that. So you can do it. It ends up being in a non-confrontational way. So that's if they're personally annoying in some way. The two ways that they can be annoying in a game session is, to my mind, is one, if they're just stupid. The character is just stupid. They're constantly doing stupid things. Like if you set up that ambush, there's one guy who wants to Rambo out and run in straight up, and he ruins it for everyone else. Or the guy's like, I hit on the barmaid, and like insists on playing through with it. They're just stupid or whatever. Again, that will usually sort itself out between the players. The player will sense that other players aren't comfortable with it or annoyed with it. Or someone will actually say, stop being stupid or whatever, and it will get sorted out. Because as I've said before, love can be unrequited, but hate is usually mutual. So if you're annoyed by them, they're probably annoyed by you, and so they'll wander off as a player. They'll wander off at some opportunity. There doesn't have to be this confrontation. We're kicking you out of the game group, Bob. There doesn't really have to be like that. Especially, as I said, if you've got those terms of play where every 6 to 10 weeks you're taking a break and reassessing, people will use that break to move on. The same as in my gym, people do 3-month terms. So if they're not happy with what they're doing, then at the end of the 3-month term, they don't renew, whatever the reason might be. So yeah, there's the player is personally annoying in some way. Around the game table, the character is simply stupid, and then the last way in which they're a problem is that they just don't really get the campaign and what it's about. They're just sort of like if you're doing the Twilight 2000 thing and you're running around helping prisoners of war escape, and then there's somebody else who's busily writing their romantic backstory or something like that. That's not a fit. But vice versa would also not be a fit. If you've got this table of Thespy gamers who are all about, detailed emotional arcs for their characters and stuff, and then you got this one player who says, yeah, but when do we get to shoot someone in the head? Then it wouldn't be a fit. So they just don't really get what the campaign is about. So as game master, you try to accommodate that as much as you can. Everyone sort of should get a moment for their character to shine if they want that, because some players want to be out there and doing all the dramatic stuff at the game table, whether it be dramatic drama or dramatic heroism or whatever, and other players are happy just to sort of sit back. It's happened many times with me over the years that you talk to the players outside the game session and you're like, okay, Bob, things, you're a bit quiet, all good. It's like, yeah, this is the best game ever. He's just sitting there quietly and you're like, okay, if that's, if you're cool with it, then you're great. So yeah. But yeah, most problems, as I said, I find that they're self-resolving. The player just wanders off, and if not, then a little bit of accommodation of the different tastes around the game table can help. Over to you.
Me, I throw them out. No, I mean, generally speaking, I have been exceedingly lucky in both event and home games that I've never really had someone show up who was like positively disruptive. I've had people who were negatively disruptive, but it was generally a mistake. They didn't realize that by sitting there and looking at their phone or leafing through a section of the player's handbook that has no pertinence and so on and et cetera, was it being detrimental to the game. But I've never had a positive detriment at the table. I imagine that I could probably discuss things with the person and say, hey, this is the kind of game I'm running. Is this the kind of game you want to play? Because here's sort of what's going on, and if they said, oh, wow, okay, I didn't understand that Tales from the Loop was like Stranger Things. That's what my character kept saying. I want to get a gun and shoot the bad guys. I had a completely different mindset. Or if they're like, well, no, that's stupid. My character likes guns, and yeah, I know I'm playing a 14-year-old, but he likes guns and he likes to shoot that big. Well, you're probably at the wrong table, and you should probably go find a different game to play. Because I don't think you're going to have a lot of fun here, and what you're doing is kind of disruptive to other people's fun.
Well, I find though most people are they'll go with it like, oh, I'd expected we'd be running and gunning a bit, and we're not. Okay, this is cool actually. Like when I ran an AD&D campaign, I vividly remember one guy, Paul, like his character just died from, I can't remember what it was, but his character died, and he's like, oh, he'd come from playing. 5th Ed wasn't out then, so it would have been 4th or 3.5 or something. It's like, oh, what? Your character can die in this? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm sorry. Like, sometimes it happens, it's not like I'm not out to kill you, but sometimes it just happens. He goes, no, it's good. This is good. It actually feels good. Okay, it feels good your character died. Okay, great. And he got to rolling up another one. And Paul was a quite long-term player with us. He came to every term, and he was, he'd give Traveller a go and all the rest. He's now moved off to Perth, unfortunately, but so he had certain expectations, and the game was different to those, and then he found actually he liked them. He liked the different stuff. So that can happen too. That can happen with players, that the game isn't what they expect, but they like it. But it can also happen with the dungeon master, that the game doesn't turn out how you expected, but you actually enjoyed it. So that's what I always encourage, like when there's a problem player or things aren't going, roll with it for a little bit, because it might resolve itself with the annoying player going away, or the annoying player becoming a bit less annoying, or even it turns out that they're not annoying and they bring something to the table and they change things a little bit. You learn from it. I mean, I was kicked out of my first ever game group, so but I'm still gaming 40 years on April. It's always been, or I forgot the anniversary, because it was April Fool's Day 1983 was my first game of D&D. So
there you go. 40 years.
40 years. Yeah, they kicked me out a few months later. I don't know what date that was, but
So this is right. But to the question when you're talking about earlier, characters or players who leave, are their characters theirs to do with or not? Got some interesting responses on Twitter. Let's see here, and some funny ones. We'll kind of share the insightful ones. And by the way, if you popped over from Twitter to watch this, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. And if you haven't, please click the subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications, and give the stream a thumbs up if you like it. So I put the question this way because 255 characters. If a player departs your campaign on amiable terms and they are never to come back, if they ask that they own their character and determine the character's departure and eventual fate, are you as a DM obligated to accept that? Now, it is very strongly in favor of yes, it's their character, with 25% of people saying no, the character is yours on 105 votes, which is a pretty good sample size for statistics. Let's see. There's the link to the stream. If you're already in the stream, don't click that link. It'll just create a space-time warp, and we don't know what'll happen then. Engine Joe here comes straight out of the running blocks with, why would you keep it cluttering up the rest of the character sheets? Ask him for a buck or a Coke out of the machine and call it even. Which again shows the importance of snacks. Answer Connect's question, Kyle, while I'm looking for the next good one, please.
Do adult beverages count as snacks? Undoubtedly.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Thank you.
While bearing in mind who your company is, it's when my son first started gaming with us, when we did all the lockdown, we were doing the gaming through this way, through streams, and so I had my what was he then, 7, 8 year old son with us. So there wasn't time to knock back a long neck of VB. I mean, if the other players wanted to, I didn't care, but I was a player in that. John was doing. I didn't care if the other players wanted to do that, but I wasn't going to do that myself. But apart from that, yeah, of course.
There you go.
Certainly with adults.
Of course. Let's see. We got a response here. They can do whatever they want with it, but as far as the story goes for the rest of the players in campaign, their idea would be a suggestion. I would think the DM is the head storyteller. It's cooperative, but someone has to make a call. That's why they're called a referee. As they are now an NPC, they are mine now. Kind of sinister. This guy's got his whole World Anvil thing, the Nexus going on, where he kind of does some multiverse stuff. That's interesting. I might check that out. Let's see. Oh, this one looks funny. Oh, this one's kind of long. I don't know how they got this many characters. Let's see. You can write them.
If you pay for Twitter, they'll give you up to 10,000 characters, I think, which would be a very long tweet, but.
There you go. You could write this out so they don't really appear again, but come on. That handsome bard that charmed the orc leader, he'd be mentioned in history. If you did a Lodos War like anime, AI animation years from now, and the jerk that played him and rolled with fudge dice was still a jerk, you'd change the name, but it's all shared storytelling. Nice thing to think on. And then he kind of goes on with a few ideas. Offensivist Maximus, I will respond to you on Twitter. I'm not frosting you, but that is a lot to go into. Let's see. Brian Whitcraft says, why not both? Because it's anyway. There's a photocopier at work for a reason. Okay, I got you now, Brian. Cerulean says, they're free to play that character outside wherever, but as a DM, the story is mine outside of what the players do. He gone, my story now. Joel Clark, no campaign element is wholly owned by any of its co-creators, just as when they've played, the character's fate should be decided collaboratively. Ultimately, those who continue the campaign have prime.
Something occurs to me, though, Bill. What happened to taking your character and then taking them to another campaign?
And it's funny because this came up when we were looking at having a couple players had to roll new characters last night, as you are aware. And anyway, in the Dungeon Master section, it said, hey, somebody may bring a character from another campaign. In the instance that prompted this, because this question was not asked in a vacuum, I try not to do that. I try not to do the whole, well, what if a character with a Dex 18 got +5 plate mail and a +5 shield and is then hasted? Is their armor class effect -13? No, it's negative. Get out of my game store, because that's a ridiculous spherical cow argument. Because this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. If James finds the player in question, James, if he finds a first edition AD&D game and is like, yeah, I want to run my high level cleric in this game over here, Bill. But he's not playing Greyhawk, so he steps through a dimensional portal. That's what happens. I'd be like, dude, it's your character. Take it and roll with it. Simon Ackerton says, the character is not a real thing. The player can do what he or she wants with it. My campaign is mine, and I have a long-standing policy. If you leave the character within my game world is mine, I usually kill them off.
Well, if you're just going to kill them, then how can you say it's mine? I mean, that's silly. It's mine just to just kill. What's the point? I mean, the whole point of taking possession of something is to do something with it. Well, what are you, Heath Ledger's Joker? You're going to get all the cash and then just set fire to it? What's the point? You're a dog chasing cars. You're a DM chasing cars.
Message.
That's just silly.
Yeah. Now, Scott Morgan, Scott, if you're watching this or if you watch this later, I do want to answer your question, but he says false binary choice. It depends on what the player wants and what's the DM want. I can see where the way I phrased it might have come across like that, but that unfortunately is me being a victim of 255 or fewer characters. I am not setting up some weird, like, are you going to pull the lever left and kill one baby? Or are you going to pull the lever right and kill three babies? Streetcar problem. I promise I'm not doing anything like that, but it really does involve complex choices on both sides. And we'll just kind of skim down through these. Rob Hoach, good question, but I'm not sure if it's an obligation as a DM if you follow. I mean, if you're friends with them, why wouldn't you? Especially if the request is made. And that is very much where I am. James is a solid. I'm not going to be like, no, man, I had plans. Your character was going to go up and kiss that sphere of annihilation in the Tomb of Horrors. So I know you liked your character, but that's just what happens. I'm not going to do that, because it's Kyle. What is on top of Maslow's gaming hierarchy of needs for you? What is the first one? People. Exactly. And if I never speak to him again, if he never emails me again, if he never reaches out to me again, and by the way, I should point out, I have this lovely crystal clear, 144p 23-inch monitor now instead of the glaucoma-inducing postcard-sized one that it replaced because of James. And this was after he departed the D&D game. He's like, I'm cleaning out my IT closet. I have some old junk you can have. And so he sent me this. He sent me an 8 gigabyte GTX 1080 video card, which is quite a step up for me. I know that's last year's news, guys. Don't at me. And a Ryzen 7 motherboard and a whole bunch of insane computer stuff. So, he contributed greatly to the show. So the point of the...
Why did Bill stop speaking English?
Sorry. Glossolalia, they call that. Speaking in tongues, Kyle.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, no. I mean, he's a friend. He's a friend, and I'm not going to just be like, yeah, no, sorry, dude. Goblins ate your character. That's just how it is. You left. That's what happens. So, there's some good responses here. And all, and I just thought it was a good topic for discussion. Derek Kagman says, I thought that characters explode when their players leave the game. The rule is probably in Dragon Magazine or something.
They explode for 66 damage to the party around them.
66 damage to every character, rolled individually for each character. So it's just some good food for thought, because I feel like it's kind of like in the old the old knightly battles, right? You bow and you withdraw from the field. And I think this is much the same thing. I am the DM, the opponent. You are the player, one of my opponents. You bow and ask to withdraw from the field. And that, I don't have to run you down with a lance. And I think it's fair play to let a player who has a beloved character and they have to step away. James may find a 1E group that, guess what, just fits his needs as far as schedule and that sort of thing. And I'm not going to tell him, I'm sorry, James, I have your character sheet. You're just out of luck,
Well, you contact his DM through the secret DMs network and you say, don't let him use that character.
You don't. Kyle's just kidding. There's no network of DMs, everyone. No, it's,
I always wondered that because of that advice in the Dungeon Master's Guide, where the players should not be looking at the Dungeon Master's Guide, and so how does this work? Like, once you read the DMG, you become a DM for life. You are no longer allowed to be a player ever the rest of your life.
That's it. It's over.
You've been initiated.
Yeah,
you've been
like,
initiated into the mysteries. It's like some Cthulhu mythos book, Now I understand everything. Yeah.
Well, you go to the lodge,
you're down to zero. Well, because how, like, for those who don't know, in Call of Cthulhu, so you see horrible things, and whether mundane, like your best friend dying or something, or mystical, magical monsters, and you lose sanity, and you also have a stat called your mythos stat, which is your understanding of the whole mythos. But they work in inverse to each other. So if you've got 20% mythos stat, you can have at most 80% sanity. When your mythos goes to 25, you can have at most 75% sanity, and so on, until you reach 100% mythos stat, and now you say, now I understand everything, and you're at zero sanity, and you're now a non-player character.
Yes.
So, like, you said, like, is the Dungeon Master's Guide like that? That you've read it, now you understand everything. You're no longer sane. You're no longer part. You can't be part of the campaign. You can't be a player ever again.
Well, it's maybe they're suggesting that the Dungeon Master's Guide is like the tome of ineffable damnation. It's like, you pick it up and crack it and look at one word, and that just, your mind is blasted and your alignment is changed from player character to Dungeon Master forevermore, and you're shackled.
So I thought, like, if you're a lifetime Dungeon Master, surely there's a network somewhere. There's a club or something. I don't know. You meet with hoods and candles and.
Yeah. Like the stone cutters in that episode of The Simpsons.
Yeah. Or you've got to dress like the guy on the cover of the DMG, with the green hood. He's opening the doors and there's all the treasure behind him.
Yeah.
That was always my mental picture of the Dungeon Master.
We've already started playing Pinochle. Get in here. So it was just some good food for thought, and there was some good fun feedback from the folks on the Twitters and so on. And again, regardless of whether you popped in from over there to watch or you're watching me later, I'm not like, no, give me that character sheet, that belongs to me now. And the context was because somebody said the character belongs to the player, but I feel like there's some context for this. I'm literally curious to know how people run it at their table. I am very much of a mind that together as a hobby, collectively, we can knock our heads together and produce some static electricity that equates to some positive energy every now and again. Could I ask Kyle if he likes? No, Sean, but you can. Sean, go ahead and ask Kyle.
Yeah, I've answered this a few times. I love miniatures. I think they're awesome, but I myself don't paint. I don't have the skill or the patience to learn the skill, and I don't have a space in which I could spend all that time practicing the skill in any case. But the times that I've had a player who brings along miniatures, all nicely painted up and that, or the times when I've been a player and the game master has had that, we've enjoyed it. It's great. It's just that it's a whole lot of time and expense to do it properly. And given limited time and expense, running a small business, looking after kids and all the rest, there's only so much time I have to devote to gaming. So that goes into actually playing and running games when I can. I'm not running a game at the moment or playing in one, but when I can, playing and running games. So I don't put it into miniatures. But if they come along, awesome. I love them. They're great.
Yeah. I try. I have shelf full of painted and unpainted. I try and use them as much as possible myself. And if Kyle and I were local to each other, whether I lived down there or he lived up here near me, I'd share all my minis to make a.
They definitely enhance the game in terms of like you can see this guy but not that guy, in combats and all the rest. They make certainly for tactical stuff. They make a huge difference, and I think they're great for players too to be able to look at this little guy and go, oh yeah, this is my little fighter or whatever, and it's sort of we're humans, we're tactile and visual creatures and that. So to have that little kind of memento of the character, that's pretty cool. And I've known players over the years who will take that miniature. Like again, finishing the game, they take that miniature and yes, this was Bob the fighter. He got to third level and then was eaten by a gelatinous cube. It's I think it's great. It adds to the game a lot, but there's only so much time and effort and money that we can spend on the hobby. Unfortunately, we're not full-time gamers.
So now there's a. It's funny. There's a guy. He is an exceptionally talented miniature painter, Crystal Brush winner. He and I conversed email and on a video call a few times, and I was in the position where I could have paid him on a monthly basis to teach me to be a better miniature painter. And he was an extremely talented miniature painter. And we discussed terms and that sort of thing. And it ended up not working out, which is a shame. But he's a delightful guy. His name's Sam Lenz. And if he ever has an opening and you want, this is not sponsorship, by the way. Sam's just a fun guy to talk to and a very talented mini painter. But Sam and I were talking once, and I was kind of, my office setting was much different, but I still had the big shelf of books. It was just over further down that way. And I had the webcam pointing at me. And he said, wow, are those old D&D books behind you? And I said, yeah. And so I started talking about AD&D and OD&D and gaming with Gary and that sort of thing. And his eyes got as big as saucers. And he said, man, if I didn't have bills to pay, I would just trade you like a lesson for a story. As it happens, Sam, despite having spent years painting miniatures, had only just started gaming. Painting is his entire hobby. And the danger of minis, and it's worse if you have a 3D printer or 4. The danger of minis is that if you get the painting bug, it can seriously start to take over the hobby. And before you know it, you've spent 13 hours painting you wanted a perfect Nosnera, the hill giant, for your run through of G1, and you've done 0 game prep. The mini looks awesome, but you're like reading the module for the first time as you're playing it, which is a no-no.
Luther offers his usual bitter and cynical take on things. He's saying he hates minis. They never look like the characters and are always in weird poses. Put them together, it looks like a poorly choreographed dance team. Well, North Korea has great dance choreography, but we still don't like them. So, poor choreography. I'm a big believer that enthusiasm is more important than skill. Whether we're talking about sex or role playing or anything else like that, enthusiasm is more important than skill. So, I'm tolerant of imperfection. We don't all have to be perfect around the game table, whether we're doing our miniatures or we're portraying the character or we've got tactical smarts or anything like that. So this goes back to the problem players and all the rest. You try to tolerate shit a little bit, because it usually works out all right. Mm-hmm. So it's all right if the miniatures aren't perfect. I've played with plenty of unpainted ones.
The guy I was talking about, Sam, when I had talked to him about what level of painting skill I wanted to get, I said, look, I just want my miniatures to look good sitting out on the table 3 to 5 feet away. That's all. And I showed him some of my painting, and he said, you're in luck because you're almost there. He said, your painting skill really, he said, we work on your painting and I can get you there. But it's like I said, it didn't come together. But it was, if it looks good at arm's length, because let's face it, Kyle, you got the specs on. I've had corrective surgery. Our eyes are such that like, oh, her teeth are the wrong shade of white. They look yellow. That doesn't happen.
It looks good at arm's length. I think that's a good one. It reminds me of the old thing. So there was some clip of some guy talking about computers in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, and he was saying the next thing that needed to happen to make personal computers more widespread was to have better resolution screens. He said because the original television screens, one of the reasons they gave you the diagonal distance of being a 12-inch screen or whatever it was, the recommended distance to sit and watch was 8 times that. So if it was a 12-inch screen, you were meant to sit 8 feet away to watch that. And then they reckoned it would look good at that distance. And he said, but if you've got a personal computer, you're going to be sitting, like 18 inches from it or something. So unless you have a screen that's about that big, it's not going to look that great. He said, so we need to have better resolution screens for personal computer use to become more widespread. And of course, nowadays we do have fantastic resolution screens, both on, like mobile phones and on our laptops and on our regular televisions and so on. We do have that. So, but even then, if you sort of, poke your head in closely enough, you can see the little dots. And it's similar to what I've used that analogy with role-playing games before and the rules, that when you look at the tiniest resolution of the rules, you will see the pixels and it won't look like a picture anymore. But when you kind of pull back and look at the overall effect that the rules have in play, it then comes out to something a bit more reasonable. It makes a bit more sense. So it just has to look good at arm's length, as you said. It doesn't have to look good really close up, whether it be rules, televisions, or miniatures. It just has to look good at arm's length.
Right. And I mean, and that's, that not to wander too far afield, because we never do that here. By the way, I didn't finish my insult of Luther. Luther's the kind of guy that'll walk into the grocery store, and when the cashier says, "How are you today, sir?" he'll say, "Terrible." Because the 5 people before him said they're, not, fine. I'm fine. But anyway, when people talk about, well, in X game, wouldn't it make more sense if things did Y? And it's the arm's length rule. No, it looks fine at arm's length. If I have to put my magnifying glasses on and bring it up here, or take a picture of it with my phone and then zoom in to see the bad detail, then it doesn't matter. But what if a paladin got +5 plate mail and +5 shield and a Vorpal holy sword? He'd be unstoppable and game wrecking. What are the odds that's going to happen? You're bringing the mini up here with the mag eyes looking at the individual details. It's fine over there. But anyway, Sean, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you, Sean.
Have a lovely evening. So, I feel like we've kind of hopefully put the question in a little bit of context again, whether you swung by from the Twitters or you were just wondering where I was going with it. Because And again, personally, the character belongs to the player. The player can take the character to a new campaign. I mean, hey, as a player, you're not you don't owe me anything. I would kind of like to know if you're gonna bail on my game, and by and large, everyone has.
Well, that's the other thing about having an open game table. Players come and go, and sometimes they don't tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we had it with the Traveller campaign. There were a couple of people who said they were going to appear, and so they had their name in the credits for the first couple of episodes, and they never appeared, and they didn't respond to any queries. So I just took their names off the credits, and we kept on playing. And it's like, what happened to that crew member? Well, that last planet you took off, they stayed. They didn't get on with you. But if the player reappears and okay, roll another character, or if you were really attached to that character, okay, great, you took another ship there, and you're at this planet too. That's where you went. Yeah, I was on another planet for a while, guys.
Right.
And that's fine too. They drift in and out.
My favorite person drifted away from the table, and I've told Kyle this one, and I think some of you may have been on the stream when Kyle and I were discussing this. I'm not going to name names because honestly, like, I think the guy's first name was Jason. This was literally like, it's been over a decade, but I first met him. It's 2023, so 17 years ago. Yeah, but I love telling stories that start this way because I have so few of them, but it's actually true. So there I was walking up to Gary Gygax's house, and Gary was fixing to run some legendary adventures for us. And he had run a session, like 2 sessions the day before at his house, and then a couple that morning. And my wife and I showed up to play, and we didn't know how many other people were going to be there. So we got there, and it was just she and I, and the group of people that was packing up to leave. I said, well, if we need some extra muscle in this party, could you guys maybe stick around for a session? The guy kind of laughed and he said, "No, I've got a, I've got a flight this afternoon. I got to drive over to Chicago and then fly home." And I said, and just making good conversation because I wasn't blocking him. Like, hey, no, tell me more. As he's getting his stuff together, I said, "Where's home?" And he said, "You probably never heard of it. It's a little tiny town near Orlando called Lake Mary," and that's like 5 minutes in that direction. It's suburb and my suburb are literally like mashed together. So I was like, my wife and I were like, "Oh, you're kidding!" So we exchanged information, and he ended up playing for about a year and a half. No, this was about a year and a half. Yeah, about a year and a half in my Saturday evening AD&D game. We were playing against the Giants, and we got near. It was near the holidays. It was near Christmas, and he dropped off the radar. Like, stopped coming to sessions. He would occasionally respond to emails saying, yeah, he was going to be there, and then he just dropped off the radar. And I was like, okay, dude left. Well, he shows up one morning or afternoon or whatever when we're getting ready for a game, and he brought sodas and he brought snacks, and he says, "Man, I've been missing the game. I'm so sorry that I ghosted on you guys. I'm coming back. The holidays are settling down, and I'm coming back. I can't wait to start playing again." Cool. Never saw him again.
That's like Theo.
Said nothing else. Disappeared like Theo.
Like
yeah,
Theo, the Greek guy who played, and he was always really reckless with his characters. So he just named his characters Theo. So we got up to Theo the Eighth. Theo the Eighth was the one that was killed by interior furnishings. So, because so I had the rule: if you reach a negative of you die when you reach a negative of your con in hit points. But when you reach negative hit points, as per the DMG, even if you healed up fully by magic, you still have to spend a week resting. But players got too impatient with that, and I said, okay, so let's say you can avoid a week resting if you want. You can take an action, but then you have to make a system shock roll. If you fail your system shock roll, that's it. You're dead. You burst your stitches or whatever, and your heart falls out of your chest or whatever, and you die instantly, and that's it. So if you do anything, so you can wander around the dungeon with everyone else, but as soon as you like cast a spell or you do an attack or something that requires a roll, then you have to do the system shock check. And so his character had died. He went through 2 or 3 in one session. So he's like his fighter went in and he died in a fight. And then they went to the next room and they found it was like Theo. So that was Theo the 6th who had died in the fight. And then Theo the 7th was found in a room tied to a spit by some orcs. And so he just grabbed all the stuff that Theo the 6th had. And then in the next room, he's like, oh, I'm so angry with the orcs because they tied me to a spit, so I want to get revenge on them. So he went to the orcs in the next room, and he just ran in by himself without waiting for the rest of the party. So he was promptly slaughtered by the orcs in the next room. And then the party finished them off, and then he was staggering around with the rest of the party. So then, then I think that was the 8th one. And then they healed him up to full hit points, but he was moving around slowly and he was letting the rest of the party do stuff until they came to, there were these big brass doors where the big bad evil guy was with his cannibalistic orgy going on and everything. And you need an open doors check to get these doors open because they're big, heavy ones. And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And you have to make a system shock roll afterwards. No, I don't care. I'll do it. So he kicks in the door. The doors burst open. Makes the system check roll. 99. Falls down dead. And then the rest of the party rush over his dead body as he lies there spurting blood. They rush over and then hook into the cannibalistic orgy with their swords and everything. And that was, from memory, that was his last character. And then the player, went off to, he's Greek, and he went off to Greece and worked there for a couple of years. And like every year or so, I'll get this message on Facebook Messenger, and you go, Kyle, and I go, yes, Theo, you're alive. Great to hear. What are you doing? And he says, oh, I'm coming back to Australia. Oh, you're just coming back for a visit or to stay? Oh, hopefully to stay, he says. I want the game again. Okay, great, see you. And then, what date are you coming back? And then I just see message seen, and then there's no response. It's just so, this happens. You get players like this, and he'd be most welcome at any time. Great, fun guy, but not terribly great at communicating.
Well, the weirdest ghost. That was a weird ghosting. The weirdest ghost was a dude. I went to an office supply place to get some copies done. This was in 99 or 2000, and I was just ramping up my AD&D game. I go in and I'm like, yeah, I need this map and I need these I need these papers done, and guy was like, oh, cool, D&D. And I was like, yeah. And so we started talking. And of course, we exchanged deets because he wanted to play. He emails me. He's like, hey, there's this character. It's from second, but I can tone it. And, we back and forth. And eventually I was like, yeah, it doesn't sound too bad. He's like, cool, man, here's my stats. And Friday comes. He doesn't show up. Whatever, So I shoot him an email. And I can't remember what the response was, but it's basically like, oh yeah, sorry. I didn't realize it was this Friday. I thought it was okay, no worries, not to worry. This was well before smartphones, mind you. I mean, you'd have a text pager, right? You'd have your brick of a cell phone and your text pager, but So he's like, yeah, if it's coming on Friday and you haven't heard from me, here's my number. You can call me. Or if you've got stuff to copy, I'm sure I'll see you at the copy place. Lol. Okay, cool. No problem. Coming up on Friday, don't hear from him. Call the number. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Okay. And it just so happens that the copy place was around the corner from my house. So I said, I'll go just make sure, because you gotta manage expectations on who's going to be there and who's not. So I go there and they're like, oh yeah, no, he hasn't worked here for like 9 days now. Dude literally just fell into a black hole and pulled the door shut over him. He completely went off the grid. That's dedication to not gaming. That's wanting to not game with somebody. Luther Pendragon asks, let's see. What does he ask? Percentage-wise, are DMs or players more able to have successful relationships with significant others that also play? I don't have a sample size big enough to go on. My wife played D&D with us when we had games here at the house, probably for 4 or 5 years running. And, no, really longer than that. Well, it's kind of off and on her gaming. But it was a good long time, and we got along, and then she just decided she didn't want to game anymore, and that was that. But I know several couples who do game together, or they both game, or what have you, and are perfectly happy. And I know couples that are just like, yeah, that's my husband's hobby, or that's my wife's hobby, and I don't do that, or they don't do that, and everything's hunky dory. So I guess that's kind of a meandering question, Luther, that I don't really have a solid answer for you.
It's probably like the question of couples who work together, like when they run a restaurant together or something. And I know of couples who've been paramedics together, for example, and like I don't really get it myself. Like, what do you discuss in your off time? How was your day, honey? Well, what do you think? You were there. It's that would be a bit much for me, because like I like my home life to be a break from my work life to that degree. Like I like working from home, but I still like to have that separation, to be able to talk about what happened at work today, and they don't know it all, or to not talk about what happened at work. And that's fine too. I like it to be somewhat separate, but plenty of couples happily mix all that. So I guess it's the same with hobbies. It just depends on the couple.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll come down to it. I mean, there was a very brief period that my wife and I worked for the same government contractor in the same office building, and we saw each other constantly. And there were a couple of times when I made excuses to drive to work myself. We were coming to the same house, and I was just like, I got to stop at the store on the way home. And, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think there are some people who can just live in each other's pockets, and there are others people who, like things to be separate. Even like they don't want anyone from their workplace to come and game with them. Some people are like that. If they're gamers, for example, they it's like I remember saying to my gym members, oh look, the best way to get new members is word of mouth. So if you want more people here, just invite your friends, blah blah blah. And if you think, if you trust your friends with me, trust their health with me. And one guy, Aaron, said, he said, Kyle, our likelihood of referring someone to you does not depend on whether or not we are comfortable with you, but whether or not we're comfortable with seeing them another 3 times a week. Because because that's what they're talking about. Like if they have a workmate or a friend or whatever, and then they tell them to come to the gym with them, they're going to have to see them another 3 times a week. So, so the gaming would be the same, I think. Just come to my game group. I've spent every day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 with you. Come and spend the evenings with me too. So it might get a bit much for people. So
Yeah. No. It's. I think it can come down to the couple. I think you can have couples that are just like you say, they're in each other's pockets, and that's the way they want it. Colleen went on and found other things to entertain herself with, and I've even asked her straight up. I've said, hey, do you ever want to hop in a game or anything like that? She's like, no. I put her on the spot and asked her to play OD&D when we were at GaryCon just for a 3-hour session, and you'd have thought I tried to feed her an overripe banana. Just like, bless her heart, she played, but I should not have insisted.
Luther asked how many names I steal from books to read to name the NPCs. Does it feel weird when they introduce by that name in the game? No, I just do random ones mostly, unless I'm doing an entire rip-off of a story. But yeah, I just do random ones that I often think sound funny. I had a series of adventures that I ran called the Pfaffenberg Adventures. I've just made up the name, Count Pfaff von Pfaffenberg. And then I found out there's a place in Germany or something called Pfaffenberg. But perhaps I'd been subconsciously aware of it. I don't know. But anyway, and, the adventures were like Pfaffenberg's Frost, Pfaffenberg's Folly, and so on. Pfaffenberg's Folly was sort of a rip-off Keep on the Borderlands. So there's a stronghold on the marches, and then they go off to go and clear it out so that Pfaffenberg can use it to guard this pass and to collect tolls and increase his wealth and blah, blah, blah. And then Pfaffenberg's Frost. So winter comes and then summer's supposed to come and it doesn't. Winter comes further or whatever. And it turns out that there's this troll that's a troll/ogre who's like stalking around eating cattle and stomping around on people as well. And they follow him back to the lair and they find this demon queen there, and the demon queen charms one of the player characters, a fighter, and the party finds out that the demon queen had actually been sexually involved with Count Pfaffenberg, and that the ogre was his son and everything. And then one of the players went, "You bastard!" because he realized that I'd stolen the whole plot from the Beowulf and Grendel movie, the one where they did live action and then they did CGI on top of it with what's his name? It was Ray Stevenson's or something, and then they had what's her name? The Tomb Raider chick, not Lara, not the actor.
Yeah, I know. I can.
Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie was the demon queen. And it was the Beowulf movie, a retelling of the story. It was totally warped and weird. But they went, "You stole it from that," and yeah, I had stole it. So I had a series of adventures, but I didn't call the monster Grendel. I called it something else. I can't remember what. But, yeah.
Well, I do want to share with our audience the best. Screenshot this. Do a quick screen grab. I'm not going to leave it up. This is the best NPC name list ever. You feel free to grab that. Just do a quick screenshot and grab that. That is the best NPC name list of all time. That is from a Japanese, released in Japan only, Super Nintendo game about American baseball. The programmers kind of knew what English names sounded like, so that's what we got.
Random ones is what I do. Here is one of the best sites for a dungeon master, donjon, because it's got RPG tools. You've got random names, fantasy name generator, fantasy calendar generator, medieval demographics calculator, if you want to know how many candle makers there are in your village and stuff. Initiative tracker, weird fiction. They've got science fiction they do sci-fi name generator, freight jobs, world generator, star system generator. There's everything. It's random everything. I'm a big believer in just do everything randomly, and then enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Do everything randomly, and then try to tie it together afterwards.
We got to populate up a hex or some hexes one night again on the show, Kyle.
Yeah, we'll do it next week.
Sure, next week. So
next week, hex crawl, guys.
Hex crawl next week. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to rock. Haven't done a hex crawl in many a moon. Luther asks, is there a national RPG of Australia? Call of Cthulhu is strong in Japan, Dark Eyes in Germany.
Well, back in the 1980s, there was a role-playing game called Hunter Planet, where you were aliens who'd come down to Earth on a hunting safari. I think it was written even before Predator. So you'd roll up your alien and you go around hunting and bagging humans and taking them as trophies. It's pretty grim. There was also one that came out in Australia called Rus, which was basically being the Viking. The setting it was like D&D, but the setting was Viking Rus. I don't remember the rules or anything. But aside, those are some ones that have been made in Australia. But aside from that, also there was Aftermath, one of the only setting supplements they put out. Guy's name was, I think, Phil McGregor. I was in touch with him about 10 years ago, and he sent me PDF copies of them all. So there was a setting where your characters have been frozen in a medical experiment in the University of Sydney, and you'll wake up and there's been an apocalypse, and and it's 10 years on or whatever, and so there was a whole thing of you can go through and loot and get useful stuff to try to make your life, and so it was one of the only, as far as I know, one of the only setting books that they put out for Aftermath, rather than having you just come up with your own. Phil McGregor or Phil McGrath, something like that. I can look it up. But and he was an Aussie, but it wasn't Aussies involved in writing Aftermath itself. So I don't know how he got in touch with the original writers. But I could check my email and see, and perhaps ask him. Anyway, but no, as far as I know, the most popular is just 5th Ed, D&D 5th Ed. Because, as I've said before, whatever we want to say about 5th Ed itself, WotC, to its credit, has been fairly good with that Adventurers League thing, even if, I don't know where it's gone recently, but for a couple of years, they were pretty good at promoting that so that they'd get dungeon masters out there and hook them up with game groups and make games happen. I mean, that was one of the original intentions of the good old Role-Playing Game Association back in the 1980s, to have all the regular cons and to help get game groups together. And I think the Adventurers League did that pretty effectively. Certainly, I saw that when I went to the game store. There was always a game group there, and the game group, as I've said before, just reflected the demographics of the local area, the local universities, in terms of how much women there were, or Asians, or whatever. It was just whatever the local universities had. That was the demographics of the game groups. And so, that was 5th Ed. Now, a couple of years on, after lockdowns destroyed a lot of game stores and stuff, it might be a bit different. But that's what I saw at the time.
Well, here in the States, and I think probably Luther's well aware of this, and most people are well aware of it. It is D&D, and it is fifth ed. There was a brief period in the 90s. I mean, literally for like one financial quarter, when Vampire the Masquerade just ate D&D's lunch as far as sales and popularity. But that's gone past. I mean, we like to laugh at Wizards of the Coast and 90s TSR and so on and et cetera, but my God, the people at White Wolf, whatever White Wolf is, Obsidian Path, or whatever they're calling themselves, just my 10,000 feet and 50 miles away point of view is they screwed the pooch on their properties. I don't even know what happened to them because they were sitting in the catbird seat. So I've no idea what could have happened. But anyway, yeah, the national RPG of America is still Dungeons and Dragons. And as far as Adventurers League, this is something I don't understand. Maybe somebody in the audience, maybe you, Kyle, somebody with a better business mind can explain it to me. Why any game company denigrates their old products? Wizards of the Coast could have all of Dungeons and Dragons if they wouldn't ignore previous editions, if they wouldn't treat previous editions like redheaded stepchild. It's having a reverse Osborne effect. They could have that much more of the market on lockdown if stuff like Adventurers League and D&D Beyond just straight up, oh, you play original D&D? We've got tools for original D&D. You play 4E Essentials? We've got 4E Essentials built in. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's the hassle of, doing something to appeal to maybe 1,000 grognards across the United States versus, 20 million college students worldwide. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think it's I think there's some genuine stuff there, and then there's some sort of, I don't know, for want of a better word, ideological stuff. The genuine stuff is that the old 80-20 rule, that 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers and stuff, and also 80% of your sales are going to come from 20% of your products. And so in the goal of optimizing the business income, they want to identify what that 20% is. The 20% of customers and the 20% of products, so they can just keep pumping that out and capitalizing on that, and try to actually push the 80% even higher. Because if all the stuff takes an equal amount of effort to produce, then like the other 80% of stuff takes up 80% of your time, but is only getting you 20% of your profit, then you're like, oh, we're wasting a lot of time here. Let's put our efforts into this 20%. So yeah, the old D&D stuff and that is going to sell, but if it requires any effort from them, they're going to go, no, don't bother with it. If they're doing reprints and stuff like that. Now, on the other hand, there's some stuff that doesn't require any effort, really. And it's just like, and that's why you'll get a company like Toyota and that they still produce parts for their old vehicles.
Right.
For, after 30 years or something, they stop. But for some time, they do still produce parts. Because they feel it has other benefits of, improving the brand's image and all that sort of stuff. They go, well, that last 20% of profit does actually matter. But plenty of companies don't. There's plenty of companies where, this edition of the phone is completely incompatible with previous editions of the phone or whatever. There's plenty of companies that don't. And so that's where it comes into, as I said, for want of a better word, a kind of an ideological thing. Like, is it worth dealing with, or is newer is better, and that kind of thing. And I think that speaks to a corporate culture. When you get a new CEO or like anyone who's even worked as a waitress in a restaurant or something knows, you get a new manager, they want to change everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even though everything's working fine, they want to change things because they want it to be their place. Or you move into a house and your wife wants to renovate. You bought the house because you and she both like it, but she still wants to renovate. She wants to make it her place. We've all got that tendency. And if somebody gets made CEO of a relatively big company, that shit's going to happen. They want to, have an imprint. Why do we need another edition of D&D? Was 5th Ed not selling enough? I mean, but no. So there's a new CEO or there's a new marketing manager or whatever the hell they've got there. So they want to do the new stuff. So I think some of that denigrating the old stuff is kind of a bit of projection on their part, that they think that in order to sell the new stuff, they've got to denigrate the old stuff. If they can't physically prevent you from buying it, they've got to put it down. Like when they had the new Coke, they just, for a while, they stopped producing the old Coke. But when you're selling PDFs and that, you don't have to, you don't have production lines, you don't have factories, so you can just leave it there to be sold when the product's virtual. But they tend not to want to. They would say, no, go have this new Coke. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and of course they can, as always, they can lean on, that doesn't really reflect modern values and mores. So, it was a different time and all that jazz, Mataz. But that is a complete.
Well, there's always an excuse, like car companies have got, safety. The new one's safer. The old one, it wasn't unsafe, but the new one is safer. There's always something. There's some excuse to, no, we have to make it new and different. Blah blah blah.
Well, it's funny. There's a degree of parallelism because a lot of folks tell me to check out a lot of OSR products. Oh, Bill, do you like this? Have you checked out this? It's very D&D like. And most of what if I have taken the time to look at an OSR adventure or rule set, it's top quality and it is a good fitment. Something like Swords and Wizardry. Hyperborea, those are like OEM car parts that fit and I don't have to do anything to them. But a lot of the guys that I watch that do old car restorations, you were talking about car parts, there are companies that sell the stamped steel parts for cars that are 40, 50, and 60 years old. They still sell them. But the thing is, particularly when you're talking about parts for mass-produced cars from the 70s and 80s, maybe the fitment isn't exactly what it could be. It's not GM or Ford or Chrysler quality. It's what was coming out of the factory in Detroit. So when they get it and they're doing these car restorations, they're like, okay, so I just set it up here and clipped it on to the fender well. And as you can see, I'm going to have to cut this down. I'm going to have to fill that. I'm going to have to bend that because that's supposed to curl under more and so on. And a lot of times I'll see stuff, again, most of the stuff that I've taken my time out to look at is top quality. Like, that could have come straight from TSR. But a lot of stuff is like, if I'm going to have to spend most of my time fixing it to make it work, I'll just put some Bondo on my game and we'll move on. I won't worry about it. But, and I think that can happen a lot too, is, and it's to Hasbro's benefit that it happens ultimately, that there's kind of that muddying of the waters, that people are like, I'd like to play OD&D, but or AD&D, but once you get past the stuff that's currently available, there's all this kind of stuff that's not so great made by third parties, and I don't want that. And then they come in tap dancing and saying, hey, 5th edition, we make stuff every month. You'll love this. But anyway, to happier stuff, Clark says we turned him on to Dark Tower. Have you ever played Dark Tower, Kyle? Not the electronic Hasbro. Okay. It's a pretty gonzo module. I think you'd get a kick out of it. It is. Can I lay my hands on my copy without causing an avalanche? That's kind of always the 60s.
Was it called memorable PC deaths? That's what we want to know.
Will it cause? Oh my God! Yes, it'll cause memory. Kyle, some of these traps, some of them are great. Like, okay, room with a statue of an ogre in the middle. There's like 110 gold piece amethyst embedded in its club like spikes, and it's pointing. There's north, south, east, and west doors. The doors are filled with mist. Every round after the third, when the party goes in, the statue will rotate, point to one of the misty doors, and the mist will turn to stone and completely fill the door. Once it's done these with all 4 doors, the room fills with water and stays filled with water for 4 turns. If you're in there, you drown. That's my kind of trap. Ruthless and inventive. I gotta get you a copy of this, or run you through it, maybe. But it is definitely worth a look.
My most memorable PC death was I had this fighter. He was, I don't know, about 5th or 6th level, something like that. And there was an ancient red dragon, and it wasn't asleep, but he didn't seem to be aware of us. So I said, I know what to do with this guy. And so I quaffed my potion of gaseous form, and I slid over there, and I slid into his nostrils and into his mouth, and then reformed and stuck my sword right into his brain. I didn't ask beforehand what the DM's ruling was going to be. I had hoped that the DM would rule that this would be an attack by surprise, but he said that, you know, he sensed the gas come into him and sensed me forming and said, you know, it takes a round for you to reform physically. So now it's just an initiative roll. And we had simultaneous initiative. And he said, well, he belches out his fire. And he said, that's a reasonable response. If you have something in your mouth you don't want there, what do you do? What's a dragon's version of it's bursting fire? So I was stabbing him in the brain at the same moment as he was burping his fire. So I was, and he wouldn't allow me a saving throw. He said, no, you don't get to save versus the dragon's breath if you're in his mouth. Because the save versus dragon's breath is really trying to dodge it. And you're in his mouth. You can't dodge it. So, so I killed the dragon at the same instant as he rendered me into ash. And then the rest of the players said, thank you. If we can collect enough of the ash, we'll bury it somewhere under a tree. and they happily went about sorting through all the loot. But yeah, I'd hoped to kill him by surprise and then crawl out of his mouth triumphantly, but that didn't work out.
Well, someone was clearly surprised. Someone was clearly surprised.
So that was a few months of hard work getting my character up to that 5th or 6th level.
To be ashed. you are ashed. Flick.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. It could have been worse. At least I had a chance of survival, because he could have reasonably said, you just automatically taking the maximum breath damage. You're right in his mouth. He actually had a roll. So there was still a chance that I could have staggered out with like 3 hit points left or something.
I'm reminded. Dave Arneson used to live here in Central Florida for a period of time, and he taught game design at an arts college. And one of the guys at my table would game with him on like one night a month on Tuesdays. He would run Adventures in Fantasy or whatever his game after he left, or it may have been original D&D with no supplements, obviously, except Blackmore. I'm not sure, but anyway, Dave was very much you see the magic user starting to wave his fingers, and you see little sparks of lightning start to arc between them. He's getting ready to cast a spell. What are you all doing? And if you said, I'm going to make a saving throw versus spells, well, what do you do? And he'd give you like a beat to answer. I throw myself on the floor to try and, let it pass over me, hopefully. If you hesitated, you were lost. Oh gosh. Well, you're going to take full force of the spell. You don't get a save. Next, what are you doing? And he would go around the table and, you'd better have an answer beyond, I want to roll to save. Because you die. So players learn very quickly. I duck behind a pillar. I throw myself to the floor. I dive into the fountain. I raise up my shield and hunker down. Not a lot.
The other player.
Yeah, I hide behind the other players. My gnome thief illusionist will hide behind the knees of the plate mail wearing paladin and hope that the waves of the fireball just go rolling past me. John Walker says, I throw my dagger at him. There you go. Now, I could be wrong about this, and this is one of those things that I wish I had thought to ask of Gary. There's a great description in one of the Fafhrd and Grey Mouser books where they decide that they've been out in the country having adventures on the seas and so forth long enough. They're going to go back to Lankmar, and as they're riding up to the city gates, they're like, I'm absolutely sure those prostitutes that we didn't pay have forgotten us and remember us fondly in their hearts as being gentle and attentive lovers. And Mouser's like, and I'm sure that the Mages Guild has forgiven us now for stealing the jeweled headdress of their leader. And they're just going on, and they're getting happier and happier about how things are just going to work out okay. And they arrive at the south gate, and it's literally mobbed with people who want them dead.
That pretty much sums up adventurers.
From the Horis who are going to throw rocks at them to the magic user who is preparing a death spell. And I always thought this was the coolest description of a saving throw. And I cannot help but think, if this is one of the stories that came out prior to Gary writing D&D, if he didn't create saving throws based on this, because Mouser sees him start to get an incantation ready. So he pulls out a weighted copper wire and starts swinging it over his head like a bolo. And as soon as the spell is cast, he lets it go so that it flies back towards the magic user. The spell hits it and runs down through the wire and zaps the magic user and knocks him on his ass. If a player told me that, if I was like, so you say you're going to make a saving throw, what are you doing? Well, I pull out a weighted copper line and start swinging it over my head. That's some creative thinking. I love it. I love it. But anyway, so next week we're gonna hex crawl, right, buddy?
That's right, hex crawl.
Good. I'm looking forward to it, and I will double check and make sure that I sent you the notification for the stream this time. If somebody had come in and said, put your hand on this Bible and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, did you send Kyle show notifications? Absolutely, I said. That's my friend and my co-host. Of course I did. Not. So I apologize for that. But
look, I treat gaming the same way I treat the gym. Like I walk into the gym and the first person who comes in always says, "Oh, who else is coming tonight?" And my response is always the same. I don't know. I just come in here at 7:00 and open the doors and hope that I won't be on my own. No, it's gaming is the same. I do the same thing with the game tables. I just rock up. I used to just rock up on a Wednesday night at 7 p.m. and hope I wasn't going to be on my own reading my books.
Right on, because that's a painful, lonely watch to have to take. So fortunately, we don't have to do that. We have you guys in the audience, and Kyle and I have each other, and we have a lot of fun. Tomorrow night's Remembrances, and we'll maybe look some more at Judges Guild if there's time, because I think those being remembered would like us to have fun. Friday night, we'll be back with some more Dark Tower, and then we're going to play some Gamma World. Kyle, I killed 3 characters Monday night. I killed 3 characters last night. I got a Gamma World game I'm running on Friday night. So you got to be asked.
You're not a real dungeon master until you've killed their children as well, the next generation.
That's right. So I just got to keep that in mind. But thank you everyone for watching this evening. It was a lot of fun hanging out, and Kyle, of course, as always. And we will catch you guys on the flip side. And until then, Kyle, any closing thoughts?
The dice are always right, as we'll discover next week in the Hex Crawl.
The dice are always right, as we will discover next week. So we're going to go ahead and close it up there, y'all. Thank you once again for being here, and be good to each other. Peace.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Naked as a toad all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.